Invited here. I'm so grateful to SRTAC and the residency lab for the work you're doing, and also just the vibe in the conference. The symposium feels good, and it feels exciting to talk with people who are excited about residencies, which I definitely am, and hopefully I'm sure that will show as I talk to you today. So I'm talking about teacher residencies as sustainable ecosystems, which is something that if you've ever spoken to me before, you've probably heard me mention. Before I do that, I just want to introduce myself a little bit more and give you a little bit more context of who I am. Like Connie said, I founded Possibilities Unbound recently because I'm interested in building the kind of humanizing, love-soaked, joyful, anti-racist experiences that I think our communities, our students, and also especially our teachers deserve. And a lot of folks forget to think about how our teachers need to be cared for so they can care for our students. Before that, I was at Claremont Graduate University, where I spent about 15 years. I started as a clinical supervisor. I was the residency coordinator, as assistant professor, and most recently, the director of teacher education. I also worked as a consultant through Joyful Disruption, and that was mostly with principals, coordinators, and educators, especially in LAUSD and especially in the Community Schools Initiative with my colleague from Claremont Graduate University, Dr. Claudia Bermudez, and love that work. And then I'm also from Los Angeles, which is very important to me. I grew up in the Deep Valley. Here's my Valley Girl look. This is my Debbie Gibson hat. If you saw my presentation yesterday, it was a different photo in my Debbie Gibson hat. I wore that Debbie Gibson hat all the time. I started my teaching career in Japan, and that was an awesome experience for me because I was a language learner. I was also quite different and stood out, and that really shaped and informed how I experienced teaching and think about being a teacher in community and also others in community. And then I was a high school English teacher from 22. I circled my face there in case you can't see me because folks often confuse me with my students. But I loved being a high school English teacher. I'm also extraordinarily silly. So this is me rolling down a sand dune, which comes in very handy now because I have a 3.5-year-old named Ellison, who I named after Ralph Ellison. I make him sometimes wear the Invisible Man shirt, which is my favorite book of all time. And in that book, Ralph Ellison wrote, "The world is a possibility if only you discover it." That's something I hold in my heart for my son, but also for all of education. I think there's a lot of possibilities that we're still seeking to discover, and also that's true in residencies as well. So I share these parts of who I am because who we are shapes how we view residencies and how we work in them and what we want from them and what we're asking of them. And so these are parts of me that influence how I approach the residency. I was planning on sharing some things today about residencies as a sustainable ecosystem anyway, but then I had the opportunity to meet these totally fire residency participants that Tina introduced me to, and I got a chance last month to hear their stories, learn a little bit about them, and so what I'm going to share with you today is also really inspired by their work, Ricky and Kellen and Devin, as residents, as now teachers, and also as mentors. So really grateful for the chance to learn from y'all as well. So one of the things I like to think about with residencies, and I warned you, I'm an English teacher, so I'm leaning deep into a metaphor here, is that they were really originally designed for scarcity context. And so they were designed for shortage and as pipeline solutions. And I liken that to this desert mesquite tree, which has a single and prominent taproot. Because the idea was really, let's get as much as we can into schools because we don't have enough teachers. And that is in a scarcity where there aren't a lot of resources. And that was really important in residencies. And the idea was that residencies were going to be able to recruit diverse candidates and then also prepare them in excellent ways so that they would serve students beautifully and be guided by a mentor. Also pay them, and that was often coming from grant funds, but that's a really attractive part of residency. Also retain them, which often initially started with a requirement dictated by grant funds. And then save some money because the cost of turnover is really high. We know from LPI's cost calculator, if you've ever used it, at the low end, it's $21,000, but it gets even higher than that. And also limit the harm. I think this is a really essential piece. The revolving door of teachers that was happening harms students. And of course it harms students, it also harms educators, it harms communities. It's just not good for schools. And so this was the original goal of residencies, and I think residencies really do a lot of these things. And as I was listening to Ricky share about her story in being a resident, I felt like, oh, what a perfect example of how residencies do exactly these things. Ricky is now a special education teacher, a high shortage area, a totally fire teacher who you hear, who started in education and had experience as an instructional aide, but didn't really understand what it meant to teach, because we know in almost all those other roles, the things that folks don't see is the planning, which is one of the most challenging, robust, and serious parts of being a teacher. So really coming into the classroom, taking responsibility for that planning for all students was facilitated by the residency. And also, Ricky said that made her more fully fledged human, so helps you develop as a professional, as a person. And also this last piece of giving the time to mess up and recover. So that when she entered her own classroom, she entered with the confidence of knowing, first of all, you can recover from mistakes, you have support when they happen, and you can learn and pick up. So I feel like, Ricky, your story is a testament to how residencies work to meet the needs for diverse candidates, to serve in high-need areas, in high-need classrooms, and to love it. And you'll see that when you hear from Ricky as well. And then, as we started to get into things shifted, sometimes shortage weren't the only issue, as we heard from Mary yesterday. The pipeline is actually more robust than sometimes it seems. It's really a leaky bucket problem in some ways. But teacher residencies started to become used as a workforce solution. And for this one, I'm using aspen trees as my metaphor. Aspen trees were kind of like the original networkers. They have roots that connect underground from across large distances, and they share resources. And they're really cool. They also shimmer in the light. Like teachers sometimes. But teacher residencies as a workforce solution is focusing more broadly on what are the staffing needs across schools and what are the workforce needs. One of the focuses, this is often called strategic staffing also, and one of the focuses is a grow your own pipeline. So how do we recruit people from our communities who are gonna stay in our communities, who love our communities and wanna serve them? And that's something that strategic staffing supports with. Another element is a career ladder. So thinking we've heard, I'm sure many of you have heard of para models, para to certificated staffing. How do we create a career ladder for folks? Even moving further back, some of the pre-apprenticeship work is starting as early as high school, but thinking about how we usher folks in a supported way so that they feel cared for as they enter the profession. And then also meeting different staffing needs. So in this workforce solution, sometimes residents are not just learning teaching, they're also serving the school maybe as subs, paras, interventionists, tutors, other kinds of things. And so as I was listening to Kellen share her story, Kellen exactly speaks to how teacher residencies are used as a workforce solution. So one of the things that Kellen will share also is that she was originally considering an internship program. And I loved hearing her say, I was so grateful I wasn't an intern after her residency. I was joking with some folks yesterday. You never hear interns say, oh, I'm so grateful I did an internship pathway. Everyone should do it. I've never heard an intern say that. They say like, oh, this was a nightmare. I survived, but here I am. And internships often burn our teachers out before they even start. Whereas you'll see Kellen's enthusiasm and energy, there's anywhere from burnt out because she had the opportunity to spend an entire year, again, in a supported, cared for role that left her feeling really confident. And in that way, the program changed her life and also facilitated her life as a whole dynamic person. So residency also honors folks as whole dynamic people. She's a parent of 4. She was able to work as a resident in the school where her kids were, so she didn't have to miss parts of her life. She was also paid as a paraeducator with a salary and benefits, so she didn't have to worry about not being able to take care of her kids as she was doing that. And this is exactly how residencies can function as a workforce solution, and they do, and they work. So why wouldn't we work with them? And then the piece that I'm really most excited about, and again, if you've talked to me at all, you've heard me talk about this, is really thinking about teacher residencies as a sustainable ecosystem that meets multiple needs across the system of an entire district or an entire region even, really, right? Counties, regions, all that kind of thing. And so for this, I use the metaphor of a redwood tree. A redwood tree is gigantic, and it contributes, and it supports, and it cares for us. There's at the canopy level, but all the way down to the roots, where it's creating resources, it's creating space, it's creating homes, it's facilitating life and connections in so many different facets. And I think residencies can really do that as well. And so what we know about residencies is that if we design them intentionally, as we all do, to serve not only our new teachers, but also our existing teachers, or maybe our principals, maybe other school site needs, they can do that. And a lot of times we end up serving our mentor teachers by accident. And we'll hear that from Devin, right? Not to say the program isn't designed specifically to serve mentors, but so much we focus on those new teachers. So what happens if we also ask about our mentors? And then another opportunity with teacher residencies as ecosystems is really thinking about how can the residency be a vehicle for piloting other initiatives. So a residency is bringing new people into the community who are excited and eager to explore education and be the best teachers they can be. There's no more idealism than there is in a new teacher getting started. And then the mentors who work with those new teachers are also, getting reinvigorated by that idealism, revisiting that part of who they were when they were a new teacher and getting excited. So those are the folks that we want to be implementing new innovations, new pedagogical practices, bringing co-teaching more explicitly and intentionally into the school, and really thinking about how do we change things through the folks who are our yay-sayers, are most excited, most enthusiastic about supporting our students in our community. And so Devin, when he was sharing his story, really testified to this. He talked about how being a mentor for him originally was therapeutic because he was able to provide support to folks that he didn't have and help them through the hard things that he experienced. But over time, it stopped being really about healing and really just caring for residents and started becoming about deepening and developing his own practice. It keeps him on his toes, keeps him fresh. Now he's learning all the time. And this is what we hear from so many mentors who speak to how mentoring in a residency is job-embedded PD, and it's the best professional development that they've ever had. And this is what we want. So I'm a dork, so I'm gonna, oh, sorry, I have one more thing I wanted to say first. Yeah, I am still a dork, but you'll see that more in detail. But right, this healing that Devin's talking about really is that it's healing in a system that often depletes. Like, this is something that we want for our experienced educators. And what he's talking about learning is that job-embedded PD. And so here's where I am the dork. If we put on our kind of possibilities lenses, and you see I changed my lenses for this, right? Put on our possibilities lenses, there's a whole spectrum of opportunities that we have. So while honoring the needs of our existing teachers, an invitation that I have for you is how can we intentionally design residencies to honor existing teachers and especially our mentor teachers as well. And so while we're thinking about that, we can think about some of the research around what helps teachers thrive and what makes them want to continue. And these are the things that we can build into our residencies and are often already built into our residencies. Those opportunities to learn and engage in the intellectual work of teaching in a time when teaching is being considered no longer a profession. This is what we want. Also, the opportunity for respect, trust, and compensated leadership opportunities that are meaningful, right? Mentors get paid and they should be paid as professionals. Also, that ongoing and really empowering support. When you're part of a residency program, there's a whole network of folks that are supporting you. And also the community, right? So caring, genuine, inclusive, professional learning communities. And then from Sonia Nieto's work, something that I really like is a mix of hope, anger, and a vision of what could be. And residencies are literally visioning what could be and what should be for our students and for our communities. And so again, when we do this intentionally, we can really cultivate residencies as a space that lifts up mentor teachers as well. But when we're asking this question, we can also ask sort of the follow-up question, and switch my lenses again, of how can we design residencies specifically to honor principals as well. Principals are in a tough spot right now. Principals are definitely, they're kind of the them, and they're caught in between a rock and a hard place. And they want to do a lot for our communities too, but they don't always have the resources to do it. So when we think about residencies, not like, oh, I'm just gonna put a resident at your school or find me a mentor teacher, but as a conversation with principals about how can you best use residencies to enhance the experience at your school site, something else changes. So Devin also shared when we were talking, I just love having any other adult in the room who cares. He's in a special day class, having another adult who cares in the room is amazing, and being able to support those adults. So what if we go to a great principal? I'm not talking about principals who say no to everything. I'm saying going to the principals who say yes or want to say yes and say to them, I have something to offer you. What could you do with 2 caring adults on campus who love your students, who love your teachers, and who love your community? And my guess is, as I've experienced, every great principal has ideas immediately, and they're like, oh, I know what to do. So these are, again, just invitations for you to think about, and how do we move toward a community where residency is not only designed to serve the needs of new teachers, but of course still does, but also really thinking about how it can serve multiple needs and become a part of the work that we do because it's indispensable, because it can change lives of educators and students and communities. So I share that and then invite you to start where you are. Wherever you are is exactly the right place in your residency, but don't stay there, because we don't strive toward goals that we don't set. So if you're thinking this is what it can be and this is what we want it to be, start thinking about how to get there. And this is stuff that I absolutely love to do. So if you ever want to talk about it in any way, shape, or form, I promise you I have all day, every day to talk about residencies because they're so awesome and I'm so excited about it.